This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Intentionality Gurus. And we've been doing this podcast now going on 5 years,
Oh,
Candace.
come
Just
on. That isn't true.
unbelievable. And I wrote a blog the other day talking about the fact that just doing this podcast has helped me see myself so much better. Um, I don't know how other people see me, but I'm not even worried about that right now. But I'm finally able to look at the things that I do well and don't do well. But when you just told me about today's subject, that's where I don't do well at all. There are a lot of things that I want from other people and I don't ask. I just expect them to be, mind readers.
Yeah, and it can be a more subtle exploration because sometimes we can say we want something, but we're not asking for it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in a direct way. It just needs to be in a way that we are clear when we're asking for permission, when we don't really, it's not really a situation where someone's giving us permission. So it can go both ways. That, when you want something from somebody else and maybe aren't necessarily directly asking for it, but also when we're saying we want something, but instead we might be asking for it or not asking for it. So it's a slippery conversation, but I think it merits exploration because it is so slippery.
Yep.
All right. Well, so where are situations where you say you want something and you express that to someone else, but you're not really getting what you want?
Wow. It seems to happen quite often for me because I don't want to step on anybody else's toes. And it might be something as little as wanting somebody to just acknowledge that, I've done the work that they expected. That, they don't have to say I was great or anything else, but some sort of acknowledgement that, oh yeah, you did do this. And that's where it's difficult for me because I tend to thank everyone for doing everything, even if it's not directed at me.
Yeah, so that's a situation where you're doing something in performance is something you've agreed to, or some expectation, let's say.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And the other person, what underneath that is an element, probably not the only element, where you would appreciate, you would don't feel comfortable asking for acknowledgement.
Exactly.
Okay. And how does it feel when those episodes occur?
Usually I start to beat myself up over it. It's, like somebody doesn't have to thank you or acknowledge you all the time. Why do you expect it? And then, that other voice says, well, hey, because you do it. And the reality of it is I do it because I find it important for me. But, I'll argue with myself over it and judge myself. And the reality of it is that does me no good.
In what way?
Because then I start getting mad at myself for not being either more articulate or even letting somebody know that this is a need that I have. So, I'll give you one example. I'm doing these side jobs for my old weekend job that I had. And I know I'm going above and beyond. And I'm not even being acknowledged that, oh, you took care of this when you were supposed to, because I'm filling in for other people who aren't doing their job. Instead, their acknowledgement is, oh, we'll give you another assignment and another assignment. And it's like, now I'm starting to get overwhelmed And am I even doing the assignment correctly? So it would just be nice to have that acknowledgement, but then I beat myself up, you don't need it, but you don't even know if you're doing a good job. And just because you're getting paid doesn't mean anything. I mean, that's just an obligation.
What would happen if you did ask for it? The acknowledgement.
I don't know, because I'm working for somebody new who does not know how to express himself, whether it be in an email or a phone call. So the reality of it is, I think even if I did ask for it, in his manner of communication, I may not even realize I was getting it.
So what does that open up?
Well, it opens up that, we all don't look at things the same way. That, getting myself upset over it, is really a waste of my own energy, which I could be putting to something else. And that I should just go out and do what I have to do, and not worry about things until something is said, whether it be positive or negative.
So hearing all of that in one, let's say paragraph.
Yeah.
What's popping up for you?
A lot of feeling inadequate, and from that job onto so many other things in my life. For example, before we went online, I told you that I was putting things together for taxes, and I was zoned into looking for everything in one place, and I kept looking and looking. There were some things that were missing. And when I asked two people to provide me with sending it to me again, not putting the burden that, hey, you never sent it to me, but I don't know if you did or not, but could you send it to me again? And then it was hearing things like, well, I'm really busy now, I'll get it to you later. Or, well, why don't you look harder? It must be there. And I had this negative feeling about myself to begin with that certainly didn't help. And I felt like I was, really in that hamster wheel, just trying to get things straightened out. And I was getting, literally, papers were flying all over the studio.
And if you were to, so the thing you wanted was the data you needed to get the taxes done.
Right. Yep.
Okay. And the thing you asked for, and I mean that word ask in a deeper sense.
Right.
Is what?
Better communication. And understanding that I can't move forward without the data.
And the other words that occur to me would be cooperation, collaboration,
Yep.
contribution, that it's not your duty.
Yeah, that's difficult for me. I can ask for that with a small group of people, and you would think that would be my family, and it's not.
So far.
Well, I think the reason being is my whole life, I sort of set myself up as, first being the good child and making sure you do what your parents need, and being the youngest, doing things for your brothers. And then, getting married and, well, you take care of your husband. None of these things were truly enforced by any of these people, by my parents, by my husband's. but there's that little voice in my head that says, well, you're good at these things, so you should just do them. And then I don't let others know that I don't want to, or I want them to work more closely with me. So that's an issue that I need to address if I don't want to feel like I'm being ignored.
Okay, so what's popping up for me is how much other people's ideas of roles and what people should do has helped train you to think that I need to do X.
So I saw it growing up with my mother. It's interesting because I would say the first 40 years of my life, I really believed that I had to be this do it yourself person. I've slowly gotten away from that again, except in certain family situations, and maybe in a few friendships, but not as much, because I'm starting to get stronger there, saying, this is my limit, but I don't put the boundaries on for my family the way I really need to.
Okay, so another way to look at it is to ask more clearly for what you want.
Right.
And asking is a loaded word. In what way is it loaded?
So based on my past experience, when you ask for something, some people think you're very needy. Some people think you're incompetent. I mean, those are the words that I hear in my head. You're so needy, like, don't ask. Or you're so incompetent, you don't even know where to go find the information. In those two words just like gnaw at me.
And
Especially
so
you're
is it really
incompetent.
asking in this instance? Is it really asking?
Yeah, I believe it is, because if I ask for something and it's presumed by the other person, I already have it, I should already know it. That triggers that I must be incompetent. Why don't I have it? Or why don't I know it? And yet in business, I'm willing to say that's something that I'm really not familiar with. Can you give me some time to check it out? Or, in this case, looking for these files, when I asked for it and then I got this negative response, I said to both of them, let me go through the file drawer one more time, because I wanted somehow for it to magically appear to prove that, oh, I'm sorry, I do have them. Like, I'm not as incompetent as I was feeling asking you for it.
And how many times had you gone through the cabinet or whatever before you asked?
Only once.
Okay. Right. So the distinction I was exploring, and there's no right or wrong answer here, is when are we asking? And when are we, it's a requirement, you need it. And let's just say the issue is you lost it. Let's say you're total screw up. You lost it. You're irresponsible. You
Right.
ate it. Who cares? All right. So let's just stipulate to that. You still need it.
Right.
Okay. So knowing that, hearing that, what occurs to you?
That it should be okay to ask for it and receive it. You know, I
Okay,
can,
so let me just grab that.
okay,
It
all right.
should be okay. Like, who's giving you permission? It's required. And
You're
you're
right.
the one tasked with or self-tasked with doing it.
It's something that I have to ask for and just accept whatever, whatever rebounds from them and let it like bounce off of me.
Okay, so I think you remember the stricken look story that I always tell with a former colleague, that whenever I would broach a specific topic with him, he would get a stricken look and it would stop me in my tracks. And do you remember the rest of the story where my husband, who was a very wise man, said, "Dear, the stricken look is a given." All right, it's like, check the box, you know, then walk into the room, check the box. I got the stricken look. All right, proceed. All right, so regardless of the response you get from the other person, are they the gatekeepers on whether you get the information? Can you get the information any other way?
In this case, no.
Okay, all right. Even if it were in other cases, the point is, what's the harm in having them give it to you again? You're the person that's being tasked either by choice or by default, or, you know, whatever it happens to be, abdication by others. And I know all of those are judgmental words. I don't mean them that way, but I do mean them to really be clear. And these are issues I've had to come to grips with. So it's not like
Sure.
I'm not still working on all of these issues. That's the point of today's podcast. But to be really aware of, when are we presenting something as if somebody else has the option to say no? And when is it something we need? And then when we get into some of the bigger, you know, more existential questions of what do we want in our lives, where are we still applying that kind of, no, I could be talked out of it? So what's going on in your head right now?
Yeah, so a number of things are going on in my head. Yesterday it felt very crowded. Today it doesn't. But what I'm hearing is that when you need something, either you I personally have to go out and get it, or if I in getting it, maybe asking somebody, or maybe doing more filtering through file cabinets. And when I listen to you about the stricken look, what I need to come to grips with, especially with these two wonderful individuals in my life, that when I ask for something, I'm automatically going to hear, you know, like, I can't do it now, or you must have it, and just say, well, I get that, but I still need it. And when can I expect it?
And if that were to occur, that sequence were to occur, where would there be room for you to be beating yourself up that I must be, you know,
Actually, I
a
wouldn't.
loser in some way?
Yeah. In that case, I don't think, if I did it in that manner, I do not think I'd be beating myself up. I would just be acknowledging that I need this. I cannot find it. And so I know you have it. And so please, you know, send it to me. And I won't even use the word again. Just please send it to me. And I'm not pointing fingers at you didn't do this the first time. Which
You're not pointing fingers at them or yourself.
no fingers at anybody. And actually yesterday, through this whole scenario, I found out about 10 o'clock last night that one of them made a big oops and actually called me to tell me, oh, I'm sorry, it's sitting on my kitchen counter.
Hmm.
You know, and I just said, well, thank you. Can you get it to me by tomorrow morning? And they took a photo of it and texted it to me, and now I have it. But I was going through that angst all day because I knew I had to have it. And again, I don't understand, why it was so tough for either one of them to identify that that they would send it to me again.
How would knowing why help you? Would it help you? Does it help you?
Well, I guess it's for my own satisfaction to say, okay, if you didn't send it, internally, I could say to myself, okay, I'm really not going crazy. I have, destroyed my studio, looking for it. And, now I can calmly put things away because I'm finally going to have it.
So for all of us, including me, including you and anyone else who's listening, if we were standing up on some, high place, some cloud or something, looking down on the scenario, what do you notice in terms of the several places that you put those little potholes where you're taking full 100% responsibility and you are chastising yourself for not knowing or being better or being, controlling something that's out of your control?
If I had, when I go into something and I think about the different scenarios of how this can play out, when I process that before I go forward, I typically am okay with myself in the process. It's when I don't think about the potholes, and I just go like a bull in a china shop, trying to get things done and done right. As soon as I hit one of them, I take on all the blame. I should have
Yeah,
been
you
looking
volunteer for it.
Yeah, I do. Yep.
So, and what does that feel like hearing me say that?
Taking those few seconds or a minute in processing before I move forward is so much better for my lifestyle than what I've been used to doing most of my life.
Yeah, it's so familiar that it seems like natural, like breathing,
Yeah.
autonomic. We're not thinking about it. But, we can just be pausing and noticing, ooh, gee, I'm getting that feeling like I'm a screw up. What am I doing here? And what do I want? And what am I asking for? And I'm talking about, when I came up with the idea, it actually came out of another conversation with somebody else, another coach. And we were talking about creating this policies for setting boundaries on other people's demands on our time, that kind of a thing. And so she put this policy together in writing and was just really wrapping herself around the axle on how aggressive it seemed and so on. And when I read it, it was nothing that I detected, no aggression. Now, maybe I have a high threshold for aggression. I don't know that. But the point is, it was all self-induced. And most of the stuff we do in our lives is self-induced.
Right.
Okay. And so if we can pause and notice those forks in the road. So where are the forks in the road for you, just in the conversation so far?
So on this incident, as I was moving forward and realized I was missing something, I could have continued getting frustrated and throwing files all around, like I did, or I could have stopped and asked for what I needed, with the caveat that I'm not accusing anybody for not sending it to me, but could you just send it to me? And if you've already done that, I'm sorry, but I don't have it. Okay. I mean, acknowledge that, I don't have it, but not having it doesn't necessarily mean that there's something wrong with the way I work, that I screwed up over this. And that would have taken a little bit of processing, which would have meant that instead of me hitting the wall, I would have taken the turn to the right or left to, once again, ask.
Let's use in this instance, let's use the word request. It's different.
Okay.
Asking makes it sound like it's personal. It's the same thing. I used to have I thought it was a joke in the office when I would hand, one of the people support team in the office, would you make a photocopy of this? And then I would always tag on, of course, you don't have the right to say no. So I'm asking in a pleasant way, but it was really an
right.
thing I was tasking the person with. All right. So the idea is to be really clear about that. So you use the word, I'm sorry, but I need this information. Why insert I'm sorry?
Based on everything I've learned, I don't need to be sorry. I just think.
Yeah, is it relevant?
Yeah,
I mean, it's one of those niceties we do, but I think we pay a toll in our own hearts and minds when we're not clear about that. We're not really asking.
Okay.
It's a social nicety. We're making it sound pleasant. Would you make a copy of this? And I know I'm sounding sexist, and I can be in many ways, but we've previously talked about the male acquired ignorance syndrome. If you don't do it well, you're not asked to do it. All right. So often I would hear some male at the big photocopier, how does this thing work? All right. And then the young female thing would come by and, oh, you just do this and you do this and so on. And then they would take over the task, be tasked with it. I could never have said, how does this thing work? Even if I didn't know how it worked, because I had to know, that was my mindset at the time.
Right.
And so in this instance, or prefacing things with, I'm sorry, or I hate to ask you, but when it's really not an ask, but something you want. And in this instance that we opened up with, it's something you required that was for the benefit of everybody involved.
And you're right. I use the words I'm sorry to soften it.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just a social nicety that part of our culture, and there's nothing wrong with it unless we're embodying that sense that it really is something that they could, thumbs down on. It's not really a thumbs down. You need it.
Well, and I also realize when I say I'm sorry, I'm putting the blame on myself, and then I start internalizing, wow, if I did that, what else have I done wrong? And, it bubbles up. But just asking or requesting, as you put it, it's needed, and it doesn't really need, any softening to it.
Yes, it's just a fact. I mean, it's not theirs or yours and so on. It's just something that has certain requirements, and you're assembling the requirements. So with this in mind, what else do you need for this task?
I need to just take a deep breath and either hand it over to somebody else in the future, or just, before I get started, look for the landmines, the potholes, and, figure out a way to get this done without hitting them.
Yeah, and kind of setting yourself up to be in that position where you have to go do a couple of cycles of, gee, a couple of bouts with yourself, because they take their toll.
Right.
And that neural pathway or what have you, those familiar feelings deepen, they become more and more familiar. That's part of the pattern that gets us right here, kind of a deal. So if you had a big aha moment, and you don't have to, I'm not requiring it, with capital letters or small letters, what might stand out for you that to serve you going forward, and something that listeners might want to take away from it?
Well, the big aha moment for me is going back and starting just about any project I go to do. For me is to sort of get a picture of what it is, and how I'm going to go about it, and remind myself that I can get hijacked in the middle of it, but be aware of that so that it doesn't melt me down to the point that internally I'm mad at myself. And I think that's the most important thing for me, because if I don't really have this vision of it, and then I think things are going wrong, I just internally I melt down. And the easiest thing for me to say is, it's my fault, and I'm stupid. And these are words that I heard, many, many years ago by someone who was supposed to be nice to me.
Yeah, exactly. And if they're telling you, the person you rely on to care for you and so on is saying it, it must be true.
Right.
I mean, to think otherwise is very threatening on an existential level. So maybe next time we can revisit some of the ways of making those communications clear, so we can eliminate as much of those potholes as possible. Can't eliminate them all, but maybe it would be nice to not have those potholes get refilled from time to time.
Oh, absolutely.
Wonderful.
Yep.
All right, so let's go through the week, questioning what we're asking for and what we want.
Okay. Sounds wonderful. And we will see you again next month. Take care.
Take care, Karen. Thank you.